So I've been building these things as like a side project for a long time, and it's just such an awesome idea that it keeps going, even though I don't put a whole ton of time and effort into it on an ongoing basis. It's kind of like this was. Like there was a time, this is like circa like 2003. That was the first year that I ever performed live with Ableton Live, and long story, but controllerism. That was the second year Ableton existed. I think it came out in 2001 or 2002, but it was a totally different thing, and controllerism wasn't even a twinkle in my eye. But it was so awesome. It like got me addicted. It got me to quit all these bands I was in, a year later, and like just focus on the solo performance thing, because I knew like all this crazy stuff was going to be possible and it would be really fun and exciting, and this is the kind of thing I wanted to get into. Now it's much later, and it seems like most people have decided that all that stuff is cool too, and controllerism is everywhere. But that's kind of how I feel about Jamboxes. Is like it's this like really awesome idea. I'm not the only one that's had it. There's this whole website I built to kind of collect other people that have done similar projects called Jamboxes.net. We'll skip the Matrix intro here, and the Godzilla. If you haven't seen this video, it's really cool. But these are 3 Jamboxes, and I published this video mainly to to help coin this term, Jambox. Kind of like I published a video to help coin the term controllerism and controllerist. These are, what's a Jambox? It's just like it's a thing you make music on with multiple people. You jam on it. It's like a boombox or a jukebox. It's like a jukebox, but you jam on it. So these are 3 complete instruments I've built, and I've taken like all over the world actually, and set up at parties and festivals and other things, and they're super fun. Yeah, this is like the Octamasher at all these different events.
Words.
Oh no. What should we do? ScreenFlow's not even recording anymore. I forgot to restart it. Let's try this again.
To create new
Oh, sorry.
controllers for playing electronic music.
Yeah.
Groups of people can synchronize their rhythms and harmonize their notes instantly. Anyone can stroll up.
I'm just going to show you video. We'll skip the audio because it seems to work that way. Yeah, so this is like the pro version. This is like me jamming with some peoples at a show. So this is like the pro version, all super custom and tricked out. And then there's like the super simple, easy to set up, easy to tote around version, the mini masher. And this one's got songs from artists who are friends of mine in the middle, and you just like twist the knob and select them. So anyways, I built all these kind of as proof of concepts, and what I'm really psyched about now is I'm making like a platform to duplicate these things, like a standard, saying like, taking all the knowledge I've gathered like in building these things and setting them up and watching all these people play with them, and saying like, I think 4 is a really good number of controllers, a really good number of people to have in a group. I think this kind of content is really fun to play with as far as sounds. I think having a multi-channel audio system really makes it work well, because you can hear, it's like having a monitor system. You can hear yourself better than the other people around you, and it's easier to hear what you're doing. Basically, like this whole list of things, and I call it Connect Table, and I'm building the first one. Shucks, in like the next 2 weeks. So here's an example of one you might build. It's just based on any like 25 key and 16 pad controller you can get your hands on, because there's like so many of these now. They're so cheap. They're practically a commodity. And then one master controller in the middle. And the one I'm actually building is really cool. I got, it's in this folder. No. It's, I got a bunch of controllers from Novation, so it's all like Novation controllers. And it's a prototype of this new, setup. But what's really exciting about it is it's this like modular standard, and it's going to come with like templates, and it's going to make it really easy for me to make more of these things. And I just got all this awesome content from Ninja Tune. I've become friends with Matt Black, and they have this awesome app which you should check out called Ninja Jam, which is like you can remix songs on your phone, but they did it really, really, really well. And so these are like all Ninja Tune artists. So it's going to be full of awesome content. And I got to copy this great plugin, Tornado, I think I was telling you about, which will speed up the process of programming all these fancy effects that you want to play with, just one smart knob. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. I just wanted to share that excitement with you guys. These are like things that are coming. Yeah. But that's about it. I've got like a bullet point list of things that I like to talk about, but I think it'd be cooler to answer some questions if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, so I'm just a little curious about the Arduino MIDI thing. Like, is it hard to? You said it's a do-it-yourself kind of MIDI controller. Do you just like choose what controllers it does, and then like how much like variation they give off, or like, I mean, how do you do that? Or do you have any information on that?
Yeah, well, it's basically Arduino. Arduino is this platform for making your own real world to computer. It's basically like to make your own thing with an embedded computer in it. So if you haven't thought too much about how many computers are around us all over the place, it's a little hard to wrap your brain around. But like your microwave has a computer, your car has multiple, but basically it's a big freaking computer. Certainly like your mobile device. These things are all computers. So if you've ever thought you wanted an electronic device that does something, like maybe a little robot that walks around, or like a talk box with a built-in pitch shifter, so you could digitize your sound as it goes in, shift it up an octave, and then output it to that same speaker. A little, basically like a little pedal. You could make your own guitar pedal, like whatever. Anything you could think of a computer doing that you don't want to have to haul around one of these things for, that's what Arduino can do. It's pretty amazing. So Arduino is a project from this guy at MIT just to make it so that platform and these generic little computers, Arduinos, could be the brain of a MIDI controller. So he made this really basic thing. So you could take an Arduino, kind of run the Arduino stuff, just blast the code onto it essentially. And then you can go into the Arduino programming environment and say, like, I have hooked up to input 1 a knob. I have hooked up to digital input 2 a switch, and it will spit out MIDI. So that's what Arduino does.
And do you get to choose like what MIDI controllers that sends out, or does it automatically do that?
Yeah, you assign. We basically built a layer on top of that, so I haven't worked extensively with that. Like Arduino just made it so that you could really easily make your own MIDI controller. And so what my brother did was kind of like code stuff on top of that. So there's a lot more behind the scenes, but this is basically what I interface with. This is like a configuration I created where I say there's a continuous control. I'm going to call it fader neck. That's this fader. This is the number of the input. The Arduino's got these little inputs where you plug in faders or knobs or whatever. I forget what these are. This says send a MIDI continuous controller number 31. So this is basically a definition that tells the Arduino how to send a MIDI message from the fader I have hooked up. So this is the Arduino programming environment, and that's yeah.
How many controllers can you hook up to it?
There's different versions of the Arduino, but I don't think there's a practical limit because you can always add these like extra little chips that multiplex, let you get more inputs. So I didn't get into multiplexing. We just bought like the Arduino that's got like the Arduino Mega. It's got like 16 analog inputs and like 50 digital inputs or something. And it's only like $40. So it's pretty awesome. It's a little more hacky. It's a little more difficult than something like this is a Livid Brain inside of it. And the Livid Brain, it doesn't let you do very much of this. It's got an editor where you can change some things. And their new Brain has a lot more features. Like you can do like drum pads and coders and lots of fancy stuff. But it's got a much simpler interface. But you can't do stuff like I was talking about where buttons send pitch bend messages that equal a fifth, you know, this kind of fancy stuff, or like the accelerometer things.
So what's that? Livid Brain? What's that?
Yeah, Livid is the company, and the product is called the Brain, and that is the brain that lives in here. That's what I used to make the MOJO. And there's an Arduino inside of here, which is a standard microcontroller that can be programmed to do all kinds of stuff. It's deep, but it's cool. Other question?
Since you have the source code out, is there a chance I could see, like, do you have the coding for the accelerometer on there?
Oh, it's deep. It's in a separate file, and it's pretty intense. It'd probably be easier for me to give you my brother's information. The accelerometer is one of the like really challenging and awkward things. Either that or like I think my brother got really into it and he was like, I'm gonna learn everything there is to know about accelerometers. I was like, I just wanted to like do a thing when I do that, you know, like. But it's really interesting. These, you know, the kind of sensors that are in here. This has an accelerometer and a gyroscope, and those two together are like really cool. And there's all these things you could do, you know, like people are into that gesture stuff. I haven't gotten super into it, but you could make it like, oh, shake twice means turn on, you know, this thing, you know, or like when I'm facing north, you know, the compass knows, and that's when it kicks in the overdrive. There's a lot of possibilities. I just wanted like the thing to be like a big knob, and that's what we got. Or if you hang out, I can dig around and find that file and show it to you as well. Yeah, are you like a hacker? Is this your?
Yeah, it was like the accelerometer is something that I've had so much challenges to actually like control. So it's something that I want to like. If you have information, you know, like how to use it, then it'd be awesome.
Yeah, I know the theoretical stuff about it, so at least I can tell you like a good chunk that I've learned about like gyroscope versus accelerometer and different gestures and what can be done.
A couple questions. You had a button, it was basically a start from time selection, play button, playback button in Ableton. And I don't know if that's customized or...
Start from in this thing, or wait?
I think it was in the session view.
Here.
I mean the range view, yeah. That red button at the top of the... Yeah.
Same button that's at the top for feet.
This is the back to arrangement button. This is like, this used to be up here. They moved it for Live 9. And they also added all these individual buttons. It used to be like one global button for back to arrangement, and now it's like individual per track back to arrangement. And this is the source of confusion for a lot of people, so maybe I'll just explain it right now. But it's basically like this track that's going sideways here, called GT Audio, is the same track as this one that's going vertically. And all you have here is basically a different interface for playing sounds through that track, right? This is like your random access interface where I can play any of like the songs in this entire column like at will, like random access. Right? Just point and click at them. And this is like, no, I don't want random access. I want to do a very carefully planned out linear arrangement of sounds. So like to the computer, it's kind of the same. Like we're going to play some sounds, but the difference is just the human interface for it, what you see. So, and the thing is you can switch back and forth anytime you want. So, you know, we could be playing something from here. Wait, let's stop all clips. So we're playing stuff from here now. We've got this playing. You know, but we can play this and then jump back here and play this. So we're kind of confusing the computer. You're not meant to do those two things, but when people get deeper into Ableton, they use it for production and the kind of editing I was doing, you wind up doing that a lot, going back and forth. So basically this turns gray and says like, oh, he's playing stuff on the other side, like that's what we should be doing because that's what's being clicked on. And this turns gray to say like, well, we're no longer playing from this carefully planned out linear arrangement. And, you know, so you're kind of telling it, you know, when you click on any of these clips, like don't pay attention to the timeline anymore. So if you want it to pay attention to the timeline anymore, you have to say specifically, pay attention to the timeline. And you click on this button here, which says that track is now paying attention to the timeline. Or, you know, when you've played a bunch of stuff on a bunch of tracks, then you get this global play stuff from here button lights up, and then you go back to playing stuff linearly. So I hope that helps. Maybe that was a whole bunch of like, Ableton 101, dude, come on.
I have a couple more questions. Just really more your personal opinion. When you synchronize with other live users, if you ever do that, I don't know if you do, but I know you can sync the sessions up for live performance with other people. Is there a better or worse way to do that? And secondly, same kind of question about live looping. Like what's an optimal setup for live for minimizing latency and, you know, performance optimization type of stuff?
Well, about the like syncing multiple Abletons, I haven't tried that in a long time. It was pretty disastrous when I did try it, but this is like 7 years ago. But I haven't heard anybody like rave about that as a thing. And when I make the Jamboxes I was showing you earlier, I just use one computer and just hook up a whole bunch of controllers. And in concept, you know, I'm not a low-level computer guy, but I've worked with computers a lot. At one time, I did study programming, so I kind of have some, maybe call it intuitive knowledge of like how computers work. And there's a key thing, which is they actually only do one thing at a time. And maybe that's not the right nugget of wisdom, but it's really hard to get two computers to do things at the same time. So maybe that is the nugget of wisdom. It's challenging, but what works great is like we pick a BPM and we hit play at the same time, and we're fine for like 10 or 20 minutes at least. And if we ever have a problem, I think the easiest thing is like stop, play.
A start trigger would allow you to just kind of get back in sync if you should ever get out of sync. In other words, if you and your
right. Yeah, if the master clock does like a stop start, but that causes all your audio to stop. I don't know the answer to that. I know people do it successfully. I heard things like, oh, use Ethernet. That's like your most stable like MIDI clock connection. But the answer is I don't know much. But I think free syncing kind of works well. And if you pick tempos and everybody's got a computer that's stable, you know, versus like a analog sequencer, it works pretty well. And your second question was looping.
Optimization of live looping.
I've kind of abandoned looping. I mean, that sounds like I gave up on it, but it's just such a deep thing. It's basically the art of live recording. I tried to break it down for, you know, this controllerism workshop I was teaching on tours for a while, and it was like, what are these new things we're doing, you know? What are tasks? Can we categorize all this crazy stuff you're able to do? And the way I started breaking it down was like, there's like triggering of sounds, which is usually done on a traditional instrument or, you know, electronic drum. You're either like triggering a sound, which I'd call instrumentalism. You're modifying a sound, which I'd call like dub mixing, you know, or remixing, or you know, whatever. It's taking a sound and it's doing all that real-time modifying of a sound. Or you're recording live, which is the art of looping. You know, it's like the things you're triggering or those movements are all being recorded and they're going to come around again. You know, so these are all like traditional arts, right? Like recording has been around for a long time. You know, mixing, you know, affecting dub mixing has been around for a long time, and triggering's been around for a long time. But now we're able to do them all like in real time as part of a performance because we have all this power at our hands. And the other one would be selecting, like that's either DJing or conducting, and that's where you're kind of just like instructing the large form of music. Anyways, those are how I break it down in those 4 things. And I've decided in this performance, I'm just triggering things and I'm dub mixing, and that's like all I do. Because when I break into the world of live looping, it's like a different discipline. It's like you have to be super accurate. You have to plan out a whole bunch of things that I'm not planning out, and it's like a whole nother rabbit hole. And I haven't done it that much. So I think it's kind of like choosing your instrument, Like, I really like playing bass guitar. It's cool, but I'm not going to start toting a bass around with me so I can, like, once in a while, like, jam out, because it's, like, a whole other thing to study and keep up with. And so I've decided not really to do live looping. And I would look to artists who do it really well. Like, again, I keep talking about like Beardy Man, but he just kind of blew my mind because I saw his show in person for the first time, and I got to hang out with the guy, and he's been doing live looping on like high level for a really long time, and he got fed up with all the existing loopers, and now he's like got this, these guys like coding a looper for him, basically, because he was fed up with the shortcomings in all of them. So I can tell you from my experiences and talking with him, like the looper in Ableton has some latency built in. The more you layer, like each one of those gets like a slight amount of latency. I don't know all the details with hardware loopers, but I know there's difficulties,
Yeah, I just mean live.
Live. Yeah, there's one built-in guitar rig. I don't know much about it. Super looper.
I understand how to use the loopers. I was just really speaking to latency and...
Oh, I do have a good tip for latency. Here's another little Ableton tip that many people may not know, but if you get really deep into it, you will battle, is latency. So I think most of us know there's like your sound card buffer, right? This is how you usually first learn about latency. And so this number here, like, sort of protects your sound flow from errors, right? So this is a little bit of delay added to the signal chain, so that if you're asking your computer to do too much, for a split second and it can't quite keep up, like you just switched on a new effect and had to like load something or whatever, and so it dropped the ball somewhere else. That buffer protects you because it's like, oh, don't use, what just happened, use the buffer. So that's one way to think of it, is it's like a little length of time that protects you from CPU like overloads, or you're asking it to do more than it can do. So increasing that means you can use more CPU load, but you have increased latency. Everything is delayed a little bit more. And the thing I didn't know until maybe 2 years ago is that all these devices you use incur latency as well, and not all of them. I think I actually have a list for you. But specifically, Ableton. These are all my my sticky notes. VST and audio unit plugins, every single one you have on a chain will add that same buffer size again. So you have one VST, like guitar rig, in a chain, you've just incremented the latency of that chain by that much. These are, most Ableton devices do not incur any latency whatsoever, but these do. The limiter does, because it's got like a look ahead that you can't turn off, so it forces like 1.5 millisecond look ahead. These are another discussion. But this is the key one, is that these, and Max for live devices as well. So the more of these you chain up, the more your latency is increased, and that's a concern for me, especially when I'm pushing the limits of what my CPU can handle. And that's why I only have one copy of Guitar Rig, and all my stuff is, my effects are stuffed into there. And that's why on my vocal track, for example, like these harmonizers, they're on separate chains. Like there's a harmonizer. Oh yeah, I'm using one as like a chorusing effect or whatever. But yeah, I have this VST plugin here and this VST plugin here. But by putting them in a rack, like my lead sound goes through without that latency, and the doubling and the harmonies, those are a little bit more latent. But my dry sound that I'm trying to keep as low latency as possible does not have that. So that's the tip. And for those that don't know, this delay compensation This basically adds delay to any track that doesn't already have it. So let's say you have one track that's got 4 VST plugins, right? It's out of sync with all your other tracks. So if you're like mixing, editing, doing those kind of things, that's kind of wacky. Like if your drums are like, 10 milliseconds behind everything else or whatever, because they're running through a whole bunch of VSTs. So what delay compensation does is it says, oh, okay, the most latent track is the drum track. It's got 4 plugins on it. So any track that doesn't have any plugins, delay it just like it's got 4 plugins. If it's got 2 plugins, delay it 2 more plugins. So it's got the same amount of delay. So that's why if you're doing production work and you start, making these chains of devices and suddenly things start acting sluggish, when you hit play and stop on the computer and it doesn't happen super snappy, it's because delay compensation is delaying your whole thing by the number of plugins, the maximum number of plugins you have, your longest chain. So, yes. Hope that's helpful. Cool. Any other questions? I think maybe we have time for one more, and then we can break it down, and you can ask me more stuff individually. I have a lighting track, yeah. The MOJO has a little visual metronome.
I was just gonna ask. I think it's super cool that you're able to make a career out of doing all this. And so, what's your day in the life? How many hours a day are you working with this stuff? Are you multitasking other stuff too, like building the Jamboxes? What's your life like? I guess I'm asking.
Oh well, that's a tough question.
Awesome.
All right, keep it to the professional.
Well, I don't know. I want to try this. This is an experimental workshop, right? Because when I do a tour or something, I get to do this rapid fire, and I usually build up a whole thing. But you guys are getting experimented on with the new stuff. So I've been trying to get more personal in a lot of my workshops. I do a lot of that, and I talk about personal stuff and doing this as a career. It's really it's hard to tell it in a short explanation. But the things I like to point out that are helpful for people is the images that artists put out for the public to see are not the reality. No matter what level of artistry you're working at, you always try to show your best publicly. That's what you want to be known for and judged by, because the fact of the matter is you get judged by people. People are always quick to highlight their greatest things and not so much their mistakes. So with that in mind, there's things to note it seems like for every 10 projects I do, maybe one of them really takes off and goes somewhere and helps me earn a bunch of money or sort of get my artistry or one of my projects to a higher level. A good example is I just did this remix test. I thought it'd be cool. Ableton has a video feature. You can actually edit video in Ableton. It's very rudimentary. It's meant for writing music to picture. But you can use it to do some cool stretching of video and chopping and stuff. So I made this whole remix kit with video for all the stems. So it's all me playing the different parts of the song, and you can go through and chop it up, and you wind up with a chopped up video at the end. It took me forever to do this. It was a terrible idea because Ableton's video feature is not meant to do that, and video is it's just such a challenging thing to work with. The point is it didn't get finished for 2.5 years, and nobody who entered the contest actually touched the video. Only audio. Well, I don't know if they touched it, but the only submitted remixes were audio only. Nobody actually used the video. So there's all these projects like that happen that I just pour all this time into. That was shooting, editing, and figuring out file formats that just that nobody sees. So maybe that's speaking to how much work it is to do that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of work. So the thing I was gonna try that's experimental is just opening up my freaking calendar. This might be embarrassing if you're if you see go to doctor for embarrassing operation. But here you go. So this is my to-do list. This is how I plan most of my days. These are top priority projects. This is an educational video. This is this project that I've spent most of my time showing you today. This is the Kickstarter campaign that's going to support the next phase of this project. And this is that new circuit board album artwork thing that I'm designing. So those are the things I try to work on every single day. These are all secondary things. I would like to be a better public speaker. This is like open sourcing this project, my first phase of Moldover, where I was doing like sample-based chopping and pasting. I want to rewrite my bio. I wish I had a cool booking agency. Remastering my last album so it's as loud as people think albums should be. Crepe? I missed the crepe contest. I got sick. This is John's gig. This is all. Some people are gonna see this and be like, "What?" But so, what's my life like? This is an atypical week because I got sick and it was not so cool. This is like a really dense work week where I build a schedule for myself every day and fill it up with all these tasks. And I just, as much as possible, like try to stick to those. And I put the things that are most important to me first because I get my most creative juices in the morning. So practice. I've just been actually learning the Robocaster because believe me, that's not a guitar. That's a Robocaster, and you got to learn some new shit to make that work. And writing. You know, I'm still writing these songs. These are the things that nobody asked me to do, but they're the most fulfilling. And a great piece of advice that came to me was like, you know, find out what makes you happy and do it every day. Like, even if it's like 15 minutes, like whatever it is, figure it out, do it every day. And that's how you know, accumulate things. That's how you get better at things. Is I just practice vocals like 15 minutes every day, which feels like almost nothing. And it's like, man, am I ever going to get better? But if you listen to recordings of me like 2.5 years ago singing, it's like, whoa, dude, you're going to be like performing that? You're going to sing that? I don't know. But that's it. So yeah, I built days like that. And yeah. Oh, and the sources of income are like multitudinous. I mean, I don't know what pictures in your mind. Could be all sorts of things as like how my career and my life works. But performing doesn't make me a lot of money. It does sometimes when I do all the work to like book a tour, go to some places that don't have, you know, awesome performers like San Francisco. You know, I can get paid to perform. I add these things on top because there's so much intellectual stuff based on what I do, for better or worse. Like, I'm always geeking out on something, like building something, and people want that information. That's valuable to people. So, you know, that's me. I do this teaching thing. Well, you know, workshop, whatever thing. Sometimes I make money with these instruments. You know, I sold a bunch of MOJOs for a minute. I've rented Jamboxes. Maybe I can build and sell Jamboxes. What else happens? There's all other kinds of things. It's just like whatever happens, and it all moves through phases. You know, I used to like DJ. I used to compose for television. You know, just like things come and go, and I'm always trying to push it forward and do creative and exciting things. But yeah, that's actually one thing that I really would love to impress on you guys, if we could break it down soon, is like just freaking do what you love. Like, maybe that sounds cliche or it's said too much, but you know, I work really, really freaking hard all the time, and sometimes it's like, what am I doing? This is music. Like, believe me, my dream when I was like a kid, when I decided like, oh, I'm gonna try music as a career, was like rock star. I thought I was gonna be fronting a rock band and playing in stadiums and stuff. You know, and then my favorite rock star like, you know, killed himself, and I come to find out like he wasn't a happy dude, and he wasn't, you know, I don't know. He wasn't my dream. Like, my dream wasn't what I thought it was when I was 16. And that's happened continually, and it's continued to kind of adjust and change. And that's probably common for people. But, like, just working really hard at what my current dream is has always, like, brought me more fulfillment than most other things I do. And I put music just below, you know, spiritual practice. I do this pretty intense meditation thing, which I find is really important. Since I recalibrated my life about 4 years ago, just decided I want to be a good human being. I want to like help people, you know. And it's kind of weird when you're a musician. Maybe it's easy if you're like a doctor or a social worker and you're like, yeah, I fix people, you know, like I help them out. But I'm a musician. Well, I think my job is to like inspire people and encourage you to follow your dreams and not necessarily be a professional controllerist or supervillain or whatever I am. Maybe it's to have a day job and do some cool music, you know, in your spare time, because then you don't have to worry about making money with, you know, audio clips and Arduinos, you know. But it's really just like follow your passion, because it will lead you to good things. something to add?
I was going to ask you about, you keep saying, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, or I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And then I was going to ask you, like, when you kind of, like, how that reflection process works. I'm assuming that it has a lot to do with the intense meditation that you're talking about, or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, well, meditation is a really ironic thing because the task is to focus your mind not on thoughts or on physical things, but just to focus it on one thing at a time. And for many people, myself included, during that meditation time, these thoughts and ideas come up. So yeah, that's a major reason I do it. But when you're thinking about these things. Yeah, well, I could talk about the benefits of meditation, but I think it's another workshop. But I think it's really helpful. You could think of it as exercise for your mind, or you could think of it. I mean, it is what has enabled me to be as productive as I have been for the last 2 or 3 years. It has enabled me to kind of like process all the difficult things that happened to me about 4 or 5 years ago, in a really healthy way. And I think it's helping, shape what I do into things that really do, serve other people, because a lot of my frustration and mental challenge comes from just the ego, and the ego comes up a lot, I think, in music performance, especially. Like, I'm in front of a room full of people. I don't think it would really matter if it was a stadium full of 10,000 people. There's still this weird thing of like, ego, like me, with all your attention, I'm supposed to present something really important and valuable. Right. So in this position, what is the thing I can give? What actually helps people? And it's just that. It's like inspiration. It's like I need to inspire people. I need to take all the work that I've done, and somehow that's why the Jamboxes kind of excite me, because I think that is sort of like when I step outside of myself, I'm like, why did I get into music performance? It was kind of an ego-based driven thing. It was like seeing that idol, on MTV or whatever when I was a kid, and being like, it looks like the most popular person ever. Like, like he's just making music for a living. Like, that would be awesome. I want to do that. And I find that there's just, all these unspoken things about those images that get put out there. So I'm just trying to be like a really real artist. I'm not terribly focused on money or fame. I'm really just trying to focus on the quality of my work and like sharing it with other people and encouraging people to do the same thing in some shape or form. And that's why, like, I think the Jamboxes are a great way to do that, because that kind of like, it flips the whole thing around, There's this weird thing of like, I don't know, anybody who would learn as much as I've learned to make music, to make the kind of music that I would make. That's a ridiculous statement. But the point is, it's like, artistry shouldn't inspire you to imitate. It should inspire you to create. And so creating tools that enable other people's creativity, I think, is one of the best things you can do as an artist, especially now as we're like leaving the recording age. I really think that's a fact, is like we had the sheet music, like written music age, we had the recorded, audio recording music age, and now we're moving into something different. And I don't really know what it is. It's many things probably. But I really want to carry forth like, the things that were really cool about written music, and recorded music whenever they were new. I don't know what it was, but I imagine like, written music, you could take home a score of your favorite thing, and learn to play it on your piano or whatever. I don't have that imagination, but like empowering people, I think that would be really cool. And now I feel like this has become a strange motivational rant.
Sorry, I didn't mean to twist it that way.
No, it's cool. This is really the best way to wind up these kind of things, is with something like totally non-musical and like, hey, there's a greater purpose here. I'm not here to feed your egos or feed my ego. It's try and provide something useful. So I hope you found this informative and interesting. Thank you so much for being here.